I'm Julie Herman of Jaybird Quilts and Lazy Girl Designs, and welcome back to the Lily Sew Along. Today we're going to determine our handle length, add our handle, and finish our bag. So the first thing we need to do is determine how long do we want our handle. In the pattern, it goes over some general suggestions of 15 to 17 for short, 27 to 30 for medium, or 42 to 45 for long. I'm going to show you some examples that'll hopefully help you determine what you want to do with your bag. The first couple of times I made Lily, I went for a medium strap between 24 and 26 inches. And that's what this turns out to look like. And this works really well if you're going to have it just on one side. It stays right, it's kind of right above my hip. I feel nice and secure, I can hold it with my elbow. It's a good length for one side. If you opt for 15, it's going to be real short. It's going to be more like this, more like a handbag than a shoulder bag. So if that's the option you want, that's what a shorter handle would be. And then my general preference, I have found, is a longer handle. I go with as long as I can make within one width of fabric strip, which is usually somewhere between 40, 42, 43. I like this because I have learned that I like to wear my bags crossbody. And this gives me the length to wear a crossbody. It lands a little bit lower than the other one. I can put them both on at the same time to give you a nice little picture. So it still lands a little bit lower. So if you want it higher, you could shorten it a little bit. But I find that this is the length that I'm most comfortable with. Now that we have determined our handle length, it's time to go ahead and begin to attach it to the bag. And I have decided on the full length for my handle. So I just went ahead and trimmed off my selvages. We need to pin our handle to our outside of our bag. So we're going to line up our handle and line up the center seam on the side of our bag with the center line of the stitching, and we want our handle to poke out 1/4 inch. And then we need to attach our handle to our other side. So what we need to do here is make sure that we don't get this twisted. So make sure that you come around your bag and keep it nice and flat with no twists. Double check that. No twists. Bring it to the other side and repeat the same 1/4 inch above, centered on that line of stitching. Now we are going to baste our handle in place about 1/8 inch from the top edge of our waistband, just to hold it in place until we get our lining on. So again, I'm going to take out my pins as I go and use a stiletto if I feel like I need it. I want to keep this seam nice and open. And repeat for the other side. Now that I have the handle basted in place, it's time to go ahead and put my outside cover and my lining together. And for this, I want to turn my cover right side in, so wrong side out. And I'm just going to tuck my handle inside. It doesn't matter at this point how it's twisted, just as long as it's all pushed in there. And then we want to stick our lining inside. And you want to make sure that you are lining up your front with your front, so your part with your pleats with your part with your pleats, and your flat sides together. So go ahead and push this inside. And then we're going to go ahead and take advantage of that 1/4 inch of our handle that is showing to line up our center seam of our lining the same way we lined up our center seam of our cover. We're going to line that up, pin it in place. And as you can see here, my waistbands got off a tiny bit from each other, and that's okay. It's all going to end up in the seam allowance, and especially since it's the lining, I am not going to stress over that. Now the directions on page 13, page 11 if you're following the PDF pattern, direct you to pin all the way around, and then the directions continue on page 14, 12 of the PDF pattern, and have you stitch all the way around. I personally find more success basting the lining in place now and then clipping everything in place. That way my most important locations, which are my 2 handles, are already taken care of. I just get my waistbands lined up together and I just put 1 clip on either side of where I'm going to be basting. Repeat it for the other side, and then I baste those handles in place. And one quick note is if you've been using a regular foot to put your bag together until now, you'll want to make sure that you switch to a walking foot at this point, as there is a lot of bulk in sewing around the top of the bag. Now that I have my handles basted and I don't have to worry about those, I'm going to go ahead and clip around the rest of my bag and then sew my seam following the directions on the top of page 14, page 12 if you're using the PDF pattern. I'm going to lengthen my stitch length to 3.0. And if your machine has a needle down position, I suggest turning that on. It can be helpful so that when you stop and start, you will start in exactly the same place. I'm just going to sew around the bag nice and slow. Make sure to keep everything nice and smooth and lined up to avoid puckers. And when you get back to the beginning, I just stitch over about another inch past where I began, back stitch. Now that we have sewn our cover and lining together, it's time to go ahead and pull everything out and turn everything right sides out. So first pull out your lining, and then you're going to use that same hole to pull out your handle and the right side of your bag. And according to the pattern, the next step is to sew this closed. But one last thing I like to do before doing that is I like to stick my hand in the entire project and push open my seams a little bit and just kind of give everything a nice finger press of sorts. I prefer doing it with my hand over the iron, as the iron can kind of press in your delicate pleats. But I like to use my hand before the lining's in place to just kind of give a nice press to the outside of my bag. I'm going to use those memory creases that we made. And as you can see, this one held a lot better than the one with the fleece, but it's still, I can feel it, it's still there. I'm gonna go ahead and clip those in place and then head back to the machine to just sew along this edge. Now that I've gone ahead and stitched this closed, it is time to press this seam. And Joan recommends to hang your project over the edge of an ironing board. And I have turned my heat down a little bit because I have ribbon right here. And you either should have lower heat or use a pressing mat, as the polyester in the Renaissance ribbons does not like high heat like cotton does. So I'm going to flip it over to this side and press from this side as well. And then I'm going to take my lining and insert my lining into my bag so that I can top stitch around my project. And you can either use pins or clips to hold the top together so that the seam is exactly at the top of your bag before you head over to your machine to top stitch the edge of your bag and finish your Lily pocket purse. Top stitching directions are on the bottom of page 14. Page 12 if you're using the PDF pattern. We're simply going to top stitch around the bag. I have my machine set at 3.0 and I still have my walking foot in place. And I'm gonna begin on the back, kind of about an inch or two from the handle, go around to the front and then back to the back. One last thing that I'm going to do before I begin is I'm going to put a leader ender in. Since I want nice stitching on either side, I don't want to end up with a thread nest. So this way I can pull my threads out the back and trim the excess off after I do the top stitching. And just go nice and slow around the bag. And when you get here, if you have a lot of bulk and if you're struggling, just go nice and slow. You can always manually turn your machine if needed. I find that as long as I go nice and slow, that I am successful. And now that I can see my leader ender, I'm going to go ahead and trim that off so that when I get back around to this point, I can just sew right back onto my stitching. Thanks for watching here today. If you enjoyed this video, Please be sure to like it and leave a comment. In our final upcoming video, I'm going to go over some of the many variations that you can do to customize your Lily Pocket Purse. See you soon!